Hello, and welcome to another episode of Walk of the Dog Cinema. Roka and I are out about on our walk here. Sorry I haven't posted too much, but it's been a busy week trying to get in movies and just doing stuff. A lot of crazy things happening at my work, so just dealing with all the changes that are going on in work life, and trying to get to watch a movie along with hockey playoffs makes it kind of tough. And last night I was able to get in Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, and I'm talking about the 1937 animated classic. I'm a big Disney animated film buff, and I probably got the date wrong on that one, but anyhow, the point being, finer details of the movie and not everything around it, but the point being, I love old school Disney, especially his pre-World War II stuff. I would stack it up against any animated film of this day and age for a movie that is over or coming to being 90 years old. You could literally put it against, for me, against any 3D animated movie made since Toy Story kind of came on board. And I would contend that the artistry and the movie in and of itself, just the themes and just the storytelling, are bar none better than and there's some great ones in there, like with Wall-E and Toy Story 2 and Coco. There's a wide list, Shrek, but just the level of detail in Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs is absolutely astounding. If you've actually never viewed this movie, color me shocked a little bit, but at the same time, maybe hopefully there's something in here that will spark you to kind of maybe get into animation. Yes, at times it can be what people call kiddie, but Disney, and it's kind of interesting because this is where Hollywood didn't follow suit, because no one could do it any better than Walt could, but he was highly popular, and they always thought it would be a flash in the pan in Hollywood, and he just kept making money. And ultimately Disneyland got built. Yes, on one level it started with Mickey Mouse, but it's really the animation department doing these movies that he was able to just kind of keep building funding. And he didn't go cheap on any of this. The level of background detail in the background art, cost a pretty penny, and there are sequences in this movie that took the animators some 8 months to just draw out because of the intricacies of how the cells are done, and using the multiplane camera, and just the absolute artistry and level of detail that they got into. It's actually an amazing achievement, technical feat. But I'll contend that Snow White, in its simplicity, is a fantastic movie. It's a movie about vanity, narcissism, and our downfall from that. And a lot of people put Snow White like she's kind of meek and not a strong character. And yeah, she doesn't have a lot of dialogue in the film, but she is a strong young lady. She's a strong young woman in this film, and it's done ever so subtly. It's her naivety that gets the best of her because of her kind heart. Back in the day, you would look at it through the prism. There's a lot of strong Christian values within the film. Even the ending of the movie kind of goes up into the heavens with the clouds kind of looking like a castle. There's really strong messages about how love conquers all. And yes, morally it's black and white, and some people can find that very saccharine, but within the scope of it, there's a reason it's timeless, is that everyone kind of deals with these things in taking it and moving it into something that feels real, but also at the same time very fantastical and fantasy based. Somehow makes it more real, especially within animation. You can get away with it much more so than live action. I kind of will address some of the newer controversies with Snow White, which I find doesn't inherently come from how we feel about film. I always say, you know, I'm one of those, I preach it. When I watch a movie for the first time, I experience it emotionally. Besides maybe some like rule of cool, which will somehow pull me out of the emotion, and I'll recognize like little incongruencies where, hey, that just can't happen. My brain kind of acts like a puzzle like that, and it's just one of those things that I've learned that can sour a movie for me. I can't turn my brain off to that stuff, but overall, you know, I like to experience it emotionally, how it moves me. You know, so I don't always look for the themes, always don't look for the straight up depth. You know, another one is if it's too much talking and then showing and things like that, that can drive me nuts, because I want movies are a medium to experience emotionally. And when I think movies are kind of hitting the cerebral part of things with the talking, I guess we can have some emotion if it's tied, but from an exposition standpoint, it isn't always needed. You know, movies are very much show don't tell, right? And sometimes I think because we get a lot of TV writers in that aspect, they love to hear themselves talk, and sometimes get a little bit too much with that. Snow White doesn't do any of that, for sure. Even the parts where I think that they're kind of giving exposition that doesn't inherently seem like it should be there, I kind of caught on this time around. Like I said, I mean, I've seen the movie, oh my gosh, who knows how many times, but I haven't seen the movie in probably 8 years. And you say, wow, yeah, it's just one of those things. You know, when you had kids that are young, you watch all the animated classics so much with your kids that you kind of need a break. And the great thing about it is that you can always revisit it and see something more. And then obviously doing the YouTube channel and kind of documenting what I see, feel, and hear, and hopefully putting something out there that makes you want to see the movie more or revisit something again. Or if you're not into that kind of style of film, that it may pique your interest. You know, that's what this channel is all about, just to kind of give an overview of media literacy and how you know, you might get a different perspective. You know, I'm not a professional critic, but everyone's a critic, and you know, it's just kind of a layman's term of things. But you know, I do have some film background, and spent some time you know, in film school learning about stuff. But you know, I've watched so many movies that you kind of learn and know just from that, and in terms of breaking things down and how you feel about it. So it's something that I like to spread and enjoy doing. But talk more about Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. So yeah, you know, the great thing with Snow White is, you know, first and foremost, like Bambi, which I did way earlier, that was a masterclass in you know, its backgrounds, but there's detail and it's rich in the water sequences. That one really was about the multi-plane camera. There's sequences in there that are just absolutely fantastic from almost a three-dimensional spectrum. Disney does that in this film too, though it's a little bit more subtle. When we get introduced to the dwarf's cabin and other little sequences, you get stuff in the foreground, background, but you don't get inherently the super moving camera that we do like in the opening shot of Bambi. But what Disney does do is build a world here that is rich in detail. You know, when we get the song where Snow White's singing, you know, I'm wishing, and then you got the prince that kind of joins in. You know, that well scene as it's shot up through, and you got the water. I mean, this is Disney flexing his muscles, showing off, you know, what he can do, but at the same time doing great storytelling. It's kind of a lot of that going on here, because you got to remember, people haven't really seen an hour and 15-minute movie. You know, Disney had done, you know, cartoons, as you can put it, or, you know, little shorts, and his silly symphonies, if you can ever find them out or check them out. You know, the Old Mill is absolutely fantastic. There's some great stuff in there that isn't inherently, as we'd say, kiddified. It's too bad that that's all kind of taken in itself. There's a lot for, I feel, adults to love and enjoy, even like Looney Tunes, which, you know, was essentially built for kids in one sense. There's a lot of adult humor in there. This is all stuff made by adults. And so it's too bad that we kind of poo-pooed some of that stuff, or look down on people who kind of enjoy this form of entertainment. There's a lot of great morals and values built into these things. But Snow White, you know, in its simplicity, it's so deeply fantastic in a story that, you know, it is subtle. I mean, it's there, but it doesn't beat your head over it. But from the beginning, you know, we see the evil queen's narcissism, and there's spoiler alerts, and her ultimate demise is ironic to her narcissism and vanity. You know, she gets killed by kind of an act of God, so to speak, but the dwarves were probably going to get her. They just would have probably had their losses, but it's set up in such a way that, yes, the lightning bolt kind of takes her out, and the rock falls on her, and she falls to her death. But it's also set up with the vultures. You know, when she first comes about, you know, she's going to kill Snow White with the poisoned apple, which, by the way, you know, like these dark themes, and you see her, you know, I know I'm kind of going all over the place, but bear with me. But the fantastic thing about it is the vultures are actually set up for her death. It turns that it's setting up that, you know, she's going after Snow White, and that she's going to get Snow White, and that the vultures are there to pick Snow White's bones. No, the vultures kind of maybe inherently know that it ends up being the evil queen's bones, because, you know, after it kind of is misty and she's falling down the ravine, the rocks falling after her, the vultures swoop down to literally pick her bones. And, you know, it's a great villain death. It's a death deserving of the villain, because she's just inherently that evil. You know, she wants the woodsman to cut Snow White's heart out to prove that she's been killed. I mean, she's diabolical, you know, complete narcissist. Her vanity so much, but then she turns herself into an old hag. And that's where I get at, like there's an exposition part there where she's, oh, my hands. And, you know, it's ever so subtle that you know, you always think, well, why is she doing that? But that's, you know, she's such a narcissist that she's actually getting undignified and trying to convince herself that it's important that she does this, and she's in the right to change her looks real quick to be the most beautiful woman in the realm. But here she's this nasty, ugly hag, right? And she's gonna die a nasty, ugly hag. And obviously, you know, you could say it's not so subtle, that's who she really is, and she's kind of caught in there. And of course, you know, we pick up on all that kind of stuff as kids, you know, in a subtle way. But as an adult, when you kind of really break it down, you know, that simplicity drives the whole movie, and it never strays from that, but also doesn't beat our head with it. And look, you know, it's just, she's a great villain with very little screen time, and it's all done with the art and the details. You know, the part where she gets in her boat, the evil queen, and she kind of rows out, it's very much like the Reaper who's on the river Styx. I mean, if you've seen like the art of that, where, you know, the 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 reaper that collects your coins and you travel on the river and he's pushing the boat. It is very much drawn in that style. You could tell they it's all these little menacing things. When she walks, she has a little bit of limp. You have the vultures. There's just something like a dark cloud around her. They show her in the day, the first point of view when Snow White's looking at her through the window, and it's just framed with the window, and you see the evil queen. We know it, and you got the big wart on her nose, and she's just ghastly looking, and there's something off about her, and Snow White feels it, but because of her naivety of always wanting to do what's right and be kind and be loving, she kind of gets suckered in, even though she's kind of revolted, and she's going against her instincts there. And it is a real masterclass there, even with using the birds, and that part is to subtly push how kids feel about it, and that's the great juxtaposition of this movie. There's these dark moments, and I was always into horror movies. But, even when I saw Snow White, I was kind of right around that age, and you say, oh my gosh, you were that young? Yes, I was pretty young. And there's a whole story I will get into there when I do my review of another movie that was seminal in that. And, not inherently, it might be shocking, but you got to look at it. This was the 1981-ish. So, it's a whole thing with that. But anyhow, seeing these dark moments as a kid who kind of like, it was kind of scary, and it has those horror movie kind of aspects to it. And I think that's where I admire Disney also. Like, he's an ideas guy. I love how learning about how he created his films. I kind of operate a lot like that at work, within ideas and brainstorming and just kind of like piecing things together to make things better. But besides all that, I love how he wasn't afraid to challenge children to be scared. Alice has great moments. Pinocchio is like mightily terrifying at times. Bambi has its moments. Dumbo definitely does. There's dark elements there, and and a lot of it is Walt had some dark elements that growing up. But I'm not talking about dark as in like bad thoughts. I'm just saying that we deal with a world. You had the Depression going on, and people know that the world isn't all cuddly and cute, but there's always hope there. And so out of the juxtaposition of the dark, you get cute furry moments like Snow White when the huntsman's coming after her is a very dark moment. And then she runs into the woods, and the woods explode because of her fear. And obviously it's all in her mind, and it's amazing how like the woods are attacking her basically, and she just breaks down. And you say, no, she's overcome with so much fear and raw emotion that I think anybody could break down, man or woman. And then we lighten it up with the furry friends, and that's where the real fantastical elements besides the magic mirror kind of take the transformation, that she's now in the enchanted woods. It's a subtle little thing to do, but kids inherently pick it up. Sometimes I think we adults, we just look at it so verbatim that sometimes we miss those subtle cues. But it is a great transformation. Snow White finds the dwarves' cottage, and what does she think of doing? Well, I'm going to clean this up. If I'm going to stay here, maybe I'll do something nice for them. And so Snow White is always dictated by doing what's right, doing what's good, being nice. She cooks food for them. Now, this is where we see that she's has a strong personality, though, when she insists on the dwarfs washing up before they eat. She's sitting there, hey, I'm slaving over the stove. You can have the dignity. I'm a princess. I'm, to wash up, be clean, and let's have, a great dinner together instead of just being ruffians, and have some class and dignity. And, that sequence, it's for kids at times, but it really, is a setup to the whole thing without doing dialogue, so to speak, of seeing the dwarves having character, yes, they are an archetype based off of their name, sleepy, bashful, and all that, but how they operate and how they become human to us, because they're inherently not human in any way, shape, or form. If you look, they only got 4 fingers, and there's like aspects that are off. They're not inherently like what we would think of dwarves or little people. They are kind of a mythical creature in this film. They're distinctly human, but they're not, and they don't inherently operate on full human terms, but then they do. They're archetypes of like the Smurfs. I can see if the Smurfs taking some of this from Disney, but the basis being that all those levels are there, and it endears us to the dwarves, and it sets up Grumpy's kind of arc to things, and it's great because every time he's kind of misogynistic, he pays the price, right? It shows how brave and dignified and together the dwarves are. I mean, it's all the setup to get to the end. So, it's these great moments. And the great thing about it is it's also Disney flexing his muscles to have 7 different characters on the screen in such a way, interacting and crossing over and interacting with the background that has to be painstakingly done all by itself. And each of these moments are done outside of any other animator. Animator does one character and one character only. And so to have them crisscross and move and all kind of converge is a technical wizardry. We're talking everything done by hand and having to be painstakingly mapped out, but at the same time convey emotions. And the animators did a fantastic job. All the cells, colors, and paintings, with the paint department. Like, it's an achievement that, like, to this day still has to be kind of remarked as just beyond amazing. I mean, and that's where I get at that you could put this movie up against anything, and there's certain scenes that even computer animation with all its money just can't touch. The bath scene is one of them. The table scene is another. The dancing scene is another. There's a lot going on that had to be painstakingly put together, and it took these guys like 8 months just to do one sequence, because you draw a lot and you can mess up a lot too, like in that aspect. And to get it right, to get everything to fit perfectly and to look real and is just absolutely amazing. And and at the same time you can look at the screen and just find details and grain in the wood, and it's 90 years old, and no movie to this day spends the time or the output to even do it. And you'd say, well, it's expensive, Brian. Well, I get that. I'm not saying it isn't. And Disney knew it was expensive. He had to stop because of World War II doing just this craziness like that. His last kind of movie that he did that with was Snow White. Sleeping Beauty, with the backgrounds and stuff. Even then, that detail wasn't the same as what we get pre-World War II Disney. But he also started branching out when he had Disneyland, and he started becoming this big giant of entertainment. So but the crazy thing is Disney does make a lot of money, and yes, it would be a risk. I get that, and I think that's kind of where I'm at, is that sometimes these corporations, they just don't take risks. And I get it, you have stockholders and all these other crazy things to worry about. I'm not saying it, but but that's my point, is that this movie is 90 something years old, and it just destroys everything in that detail and then that look. So it's really amazing to go back and watch and just think like, wow, this was done in the early to mid 30s, being drawn and then released. Just absolutely fantastic, right? But so I'm going to get to, we have these themes all going in and out, and those sequences take so long. So I am going to address the controversy that's kind of come up in the last 12-15 years with this movie. It's kind of a crazy thing. I really feel it's kind of like propaganda. I don't know how this started, But obviously, you know, the new Snow White being remade, the actress came out and talked about consent and all these things. And I'm not going to get into the inherent politics of it. Take it for what you want. I'm just going to get to the media literacy part of it. And the part that it's kind of weird because prior to, I mean, my daughter, you know, way before the new Snow White, Rachel kind of came out with her take on this Snow White. The interesting thing with it is I had heard that many years before, so it wasn't a shock to my ears that I heard it. I just always thought it was a shock because, again, when my daughter kind of brought it up way back in the day, the crazy thing is it's like the media literacy aspect of it, you can't argue with. It's not even a moment of consent. Snow White's dead, so she inherently can't give consent. And so I don't know where that started from or why. Like I said, what she's put under is called sleeping death. Her breath is taken from her. Her blood is congealed. Yes, I know the evil queen, and she'll be buried alive by the dwarves. Ha ha ha. But the alive part is kind of only a moniker because she can be kissed. It's an enchanted death. It's not true death. And so it does all these magical things, congeals your blood, takes your breath away, stops your heart and all that, but yet you're still alive. But you're not. I mean, you stay that way for all of eternity and rot away unless your first true love kisses you. You can get into the politics of the simplicity of that, you know, from a story beat, how the movie is set up. It works. It's you know, it works in the film, and you know, it's a real important point to media literacy to understand that. And so however you feel about it, you know, you got to look at it from the other side is, well, why do you feel that way? Because it points to this. And so if the prince doesn't, or you know, he's the prince or the man doesn't kiss her, she stays dead. You'd say, well, what about the dwarf? Well, I mean, technically, you could argue that the dwarves could probably give her a kiss because they do act out of love and they bring her back. But the movie doesn't do that. And they don't think of doing that. So, you know, but the prince does. And I say prince lightly because we only do that based off of kind of how he's dressed. Of any of the characters, he's probably the only one that isn't fleshed out, except he has a beautiful singing voice and, you know, he rides a horse. I mean, that's about where it stands with that. But that's that part of the controversy. You know, I just look at it. Yeah, it didn't make me want to see the new Snow White. I kind of inherently don't like the live action to the cartoon. There's just no point. You're talking about something that's a masterpiece that you just can't touch, and you're not going to get the same level of detail that you do in this. And so why would I ever watch an inferior version of something unless you're going to do something completely different with it? And even if the movie kind of did, it just doesn't have a reason to exist unless you're doing like the real grim fairy tale on that level. There's a whole mess of things going on there. But then when your movie star kind of comes out and says, it's like, yeah, you've never watched the film. Whether you're trying to score political points or not, I could care less about that part. For me, it's just, wow, you don't have media literacy. So am I really going to get a Snow White that I think about here? You don't know what you're talking about, because obviously you've never ever seen the first film then, because you would never come to that conclusion because it's never in the movie, period, end of story. So it's kind of weird. But anyhow, that's my address to that. It's sleeping death. She's dead. You know, it's kind of like the Karate Kid thing. If I ever do a Karate Kid thing, I'm going to lambast the whole archetype on that too. There's some really bad media literacy that goes around. I think that was done more for comedy, but how it's taken root in society, I get it. We got Cobra Kai out of it and all that, but at the same time, like, that one drives me nuts too. And that just happens to be one of my favorite films. So, but anyhow, that's that for Snow White. Without it, she's dead, people. So Prince, someone's got to kiss her. You know, and I contend that even the dwarves could have probably kissed her because they show absolute love to her. and what we know of love. And we get our happy ending, and it's truly within that runtime of an hour and 15 minutes is, I think, magical. The other side of it is there's always a part that's always kind of bugged me, that always took it down from just, it's a masterpiece, but always kind of took it down for me. And I don't know why I never picked up on it. I don't know if it's just my brain kind of saw it like right in the middle of it. And maybe because I kind of know the story, because they had to go back, they scrapped some scenes that cost a lot of money to scrap, and just like little things. He was kind of getting low on money. And so they kind of do a title card sequence right before the prince comes and kisses her, kind of set up the glass coffin and all that. And it's the one part of the movie that does exposition to just get you there. And crazy thing with it is actually knowing that he kind of was running out of money and had to kind of fix some things. I don't know why I didn't catch up on the seasonal changes, and then realizing the movie takes place in the summer. You get the fall and winter on the title card, and then we cut to the spring. So really, the exposition part was used. Yes, it's telling us something that we physically can see. And like I said, my brain kind of, when it gets into those modes, like it catches those things and it pulls me out. And I've always missed that detail because it's always kind of bugged me. But it's really to show us the seasons, show us that she's been dead for quite some time. Like I said, we're getting into the fall, but the movie's kind of taking place in the summer because of the establishment of this title card, and it shows fall, and then the snow comes and it shows it snowing on the title card about the glass coffin, all that, and then we cut in, and then we get the spring and the sun and the birds, and all that. And it's ever so subtle to show passage of time, but that's where I was saying, like, Disney's a genius. He took something like inherently that he couldn't figure out and makes this work and gives us this passage of time to where it isn't instantaneous. It took the prince a long time to find her, or whether he was looking for her, or however that happens. It's not important to the film. He just shows up over a passage of time. Probably heard about the dwarves honoring this woman who's out in this enchanted forest, whatever, and we get that ending. So kudos. It's those little details. Probably picked up on it before I ever did. I don't know why. That's just one of those, but that's where sometimes my brain with the puzzle pieces will miss some details. And again, and I think that happens to all of us in film, right? We watch a movie, we really love it. I don't like that part. Because of this, and it pulls my brain out of it. And then you might miss other details. So I love doing the channel. It gives me a new appreciation of movies that I do like, just to talk about them and play them over and really concentrate on other things. And because of that, I'm kind of pushing past like things that bugged me and kind of like, why does it bug me, so I can talk about it. And then I get a new appreciation, just like I did with Alien, doing that last review. But I hope you're enjoying these reviews. I know sometimes they can be a little long-winded, but can't just blow through how we feel about film. It's always nice to dissect and really get at to what's great about the medium, right? So if you enjoy it, please subscribe or leave comments what you think about Snow White, think about all of the controversies surrounding it, or anything else. But have a good day, everybody.